I have here with me Chris Messina, the development lead from Uber. And first of all, could I just ask you, who are you and what do you do?
Sure. So, as you said, my name is Chris Messina. I lead developer experience at Uber, and it's sort of weird because I'm actually like a designer by training. But what I do is I kind of work with our development platform team, the API team, the team that produces APIs, but also works with internal groups that want to publish APIs externally to figure out how to design those APIs so they can be used by the outside world. And then once that's done, there's a lot of marketing involved in sort of telling the story about how those APIs can be used, and then finding and working with partners that are excited about us and telling our story, doing social media, coming to events, running hackathons. There's a lot of stuff that sort of goes into it. But I've been there about a year, and it's exciting to see both the innovation that comes out of having a platform as well as the opportunity to actually expand Uber to more people.
So how reliant do you think in the future companies will be on their developers, or dare I even say hackers working in the company?
I certainly wouldn't call them hackers unless their job is to kind of cut through red tape and kind of just get things done without thinking about scale. And actually, in Uber's case, we always have to be thinking about scale. So I think it's important for us to just recognize that like developers are doing a very important sort of job of creating primary infrastructure, and then once they've created that infrastructure, they can allow other people to build on it. And so I guess to your point, your question, a lot of what they do is kind of this iterative process of understanding what the needs are, building out sort of and mocking what could be solutions for that, trying it, deploying it, seeing if it works, iterating some more, and it's a constant dialogue to see what kind of APIs and platforms and stuff is necessary. Actually, one of the things that actually the developer platform team works on is SDKs. So a lot of our job is to make the integration with Uber as easy as possible, with as few steps as possible. And so we have SDKs for a number of different platforms and programming languages, from iOS to Android to Python and so on. But we also allow access to like the raw API if you want to actually build it all yourself. So that's a constant kind of care and feeding process, and we're constantly rewriting the docs, we're constantly soliciting feedback from our community, and then putting all that feedback into work to improve the products that we actually make.
So how do you feel that this, growing API economy, what kind of impact will it have on the financial industry in the future?
There was a talk earlier today actually about someone who's building an AI startup, and there was a question, which verticals are going to be most impacted by AI, and the answer was all of them. And I think that the same thing is true for APIs. If you are a business, you need to have customers, you need to contact and interact with the outside world, and an API is simply a digital way of doing that. So I think it's going to be incredibly important for any business that wants to connect to digital customers, whether they're partners, brands, businesses, and even end users who might be more technical. But that sort of requires that you take a step back and you understand what your core business is. And then you create APIs that allow people to connect into that value and do things that essentially like what a good API should allow people to do is try to experiment and explore and see what the business value that you're offering is. And then if it makes sense for them to actually strike a deal or get into a business relationship with you to then further their use of that API, whether there's payment involved or not, that's the way I think a lot of businesses are going to go, because it just makes your business, one, scale better, and also it makes it easier for it to be relevant to just a broader set of constituents.
Yeah. Okay, so and as a final question, we've been here today talking about disruption that's facing the financial industry, and traditional banks are the ones who are maybe getting the biggest hit out of it. What would be your advice to these traditional organizations? How should they move forward in order to keep themselves relevant 5 years, 10 years in the future?
I'm not an expert, so I don't know. But what I would say as kind of general advice for just about anybody that wants to know how to move into the future in a way that's perhaps less violently disruptive and perhaps more productively disruptive would be to kind of try to find a way of taking the child's mind approach and sort of ignoring kind of what you know and thinking about where the real value is that you're actually providing, or the value that you want to create in the future, the value that people actually see, and then move towards that. And one way to do that is actually to bring in a younger generation of people who don't have, for example, a very sort of stuck idea of what a bank is. They have a more plastic idea of what a bank should do, and then sort of ask them, like, what would be really valuable for us to offer you? What would that look like? How could we do that? And to really, really listen. Without any kind of desire to solve or to jump ahead or predict what they're going to say, like really listen to and then dig into the sentiment of what they're actually trying to express. I think that's sort of like what experience provides you is like, okay, I see what you're actually saying. You're using those words, but you kind of mean this thing over here. And so we find something in the middle that's actually a negotiated sort of source of value in between us. Then there's a future there. There's something that you can actually get people excited about that they might want to actually work on. And then you can actually sort of bring that future into reality by sort of like, modernizing your business by going to where people actually want you to be, as opposed to sort of being like, well, this is the value that we provide. Why don't you understand the value that we provide, right? So I think that's how I would approach the problem, and how I've personally sort of tried to adjust my thinking about things as well, right?
All right. Well, thank you so much for your insights, and thank you for taking the time to talk to us today.
Awesome. Thanks so much.